After this video, you're gonna know the exact fastest way to learn the Federer forehand in weeks, not years, weeks. How? Well, we're gonna start actually taking advantage of how we learn as humans. That's how I was able to take my students and give them a beautiful forehand in a few weeks rather than years. I can tell you right now, if you wanna keep spending thousands and thousands of hours trying to grind it out, you can do that. That's what I did my whole life. I was the hardest worker, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours on the court, no problem. That's what I did from ages 5 all the way to ages 19 before I burned out and quit the game of tennis, stuck on a multi-year plateau. That's exactly why we went to 20 coaches over a whole period, looking for the solution, looking for the answer. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That is exactly the reason why I'm here today, because I want to make sure that never happens to anyone. Make sure that you never get stuck on a plateau, never break down in tears because you can't make it anywhere, because you think it's your problem. Well, guess what? You've just been hitting a wall, and today we're going to break that wall through science and through your actual learning system. So if you're ready, let's begin, because your journey is starting right now. So, this optimal performance protocol engineers 3 critical phases: the before, the during, and the after. Now, they all are very important. Without one, the other's just not as valuable. They each build on top of each other, so you've got to stick through this video to really get the full power. All right, phase 1. That's where we start architecting your pre-session state. Well, the goal here is to remove distractions, increase our focus capacity, and aim that focus. All right? So step 1 is going to be engineering your environment and your mindset. We got to get ruthless with focus before you can even start, right? So we eliminate distractions, remove physical clutter, mental clutter, right? Your phone should be turned off, put it in another room, create a clean, simple workspace, whether it's your desk or the tennis court area, right? Make sure it's remove all the noise, okay? Remove all the distractions, okay? We're trying to increase our signal to noise ratio here, all right? Now, the next thing is, I need you to decide right now that mistakes during the session are expected, okay? Just like throughout this video when I ask you questions, accept that you're gonna make mistakes, and that's actually a good thing. It's valuable data telling you where the edge is. They're not judgments of your worth, okay? That's the first thing, accept failure. Now, are you feeling anxious, right? I don't know, this is a big task today, la la la, this might be difficult, I don't know if I can study this. Okay, well, let's take a minute, write down those worries, crumple up the paper, and toss it away. All right, that simple act helps us downshift your amygdala. So errors start to feel safe. You start to accept them more. And we want to make sure after we do these things, we have a crucial reset. Okay, we're going to take 2 minutes, we're going to close our eyes and let our mind just wander. All right, we're going from whatever state we were in before to now going into a new state of being. Okay, and that helps our alpha waves bump and reset our executive network so the focus fuel lands effectively, like I just said. So step 2, after removing distraction, is increasing our focus capacity, okay? So we gotta prime our brain's focus fuel to get alert and ready to learn, right? So, this intense, locked-in focus runs heavily on a key neurochemical that's called norepinephrine, amongst other ones, but this is the big main one. I want you to think of it like your brain's high-octane focus fuel, the get-ready signal. So how do we get that pumping? Well, I want you to imagine tens of thousands of years ago, you're just strolling in the grassland, and then bam, lion. Your heart's pounding, your eyes are wide, and your legs are moving, right? Well, every fiber is focused on one singular thing, right? Escape. That surge of hyperfocus, well, that's your stress response, flooding your system with epinephrine, or what some like to call adrenaline, right? And crucially, norepinephrine, right? Your biology was built for this. When something truly matters, your system sharpens everything, okay? Now, we don't need an actual lion, but we can simulate that beneficial response using controlled stressors. Maybe 30 seconds to 3 minutes of cold exposure, like splashing water on our face, and using cold technology to cool our palms down, or even a quick cold shower or ice bath first, right? Well, it's one of the fastest ways to spike norepinephrine and wake up your brain, right? So, if you've ever done one, you know what I mean. Then you could also use something like intense breathing, right? This hyperventilating breathing style with these 25 rapid deep inhales followed by a shallow exhale like this. And you do that And watch, you do that 25 times, you're gonna feel like a totally different person. Look at my eyes. I'm already wide awake, right? That's triggering that alert state. So now we've removed distraction, we've increased focus, and we've totally primed it up, but without direction, it's just noise. Man, today I'm gonna really work on my forehand. But yeah, I don't wanna forget my backhand because I gotta turn that into a weapon. Also, my serve. I always gotta do serve every day. You know what? I don't know, I gotta do some volleys. I gotta get my touch coming in for the weekend, right? Man, look, it's not some diversified polio, okay? We're gonna be going all in, single day, expiration calls. We're going all in, 100% of the portfolio in one stock. No diversification of our focus here, okay? So we gotta aim it like a sniper locking in on a target. You gotta activate the commander inside your mind, your prefrontal cortex, the PFC that lives right here, okay? Why? Well, he's gonna direct all our focus and attention and all these resources to where we need him to go, okay? And his first job is to ask us, what's the mission today, boss? Well, you gotta give him an answer, and your answer to him is gonna be your big why, all right? What's that deep reason this session matters? Okay, because we want to connect emotionally to that ultimate meaningful goal, not just intellectually. And what does it do neurochemically? Well, it triggers a release of dopamine. That's your brain's motivation and reward molecule. It's saying this is worth the effort. And dopamine is the ignition switch. You literally need dopamine to make norepinephrine, your focus, and norepinephrine makes epinephrine, that alertness, right? So without dopamine, well, this entire focus and alertness system collapses. This moment connecting to your goal is everything, right? Now, we gotta keep tightening that focus, right? We've started to get going somewhere. So the next way we do that, right? We dial it in by saying, the forehand. That's the thing that's holding me back the most from where I'm trying to get, right? We call that your number one bottleneck. We got to identify your current number one bottleneck that's your immediate constraint in our pursuit toward our goal, okay? So we got to be brutally honest with that. Once we identify the bottleneck, we want to set one specific, measurable session goal targeting only that identified bottleneck. And then we can take it even further. You know, before diving into the content, before diving into the bottleneck, we want to prime your brain. So briefly overview what we're going to do in this session, right? And then we can get curious about it. We can ask deep questions like, why does this break down? Blah, blah, blah. Why this? Why that? We can get, curious about it. That again keeps helping us funnel in our focus. And then let's start testing ourselves. Well, I think maybe this. Okay, what about blah, blah, blah? Oh, I think the answer is this, okay? It's also very important, right? We're trying to perform the skill and see what our boundaries are, what are our current limitations and assumptions, okay? And doing this stuff, it pre-wires the circuits, it creates desirable difficulties, and it directs all your focus resources right where they need to be, right where we want them to be, for the session that we're about to be in. We're gonna have that laser beam focus like we've never had in our entire lives. So your state is engineered and your focus is locked into that bottleneck. Now you drive learning during your 90 to 120 minute execution window. Forget just grinding reps. We run the engineered loop in phase 2, the during. Execute the rep, do a micro gap, active recall, and repeat it. Okay? Now, with executing the rep, this is where you actively do the work on your identified bottleneck. And how you practice matters immensely. Okay? We want to engage effective learning methods relevant to the task, right? And crucially, we've got to adapt your difficulty based on your learning stage, okay? Are you a beginner for this specific skill? Well, we want to get as many failure reps in as we can. We want to be failing like 70% of the time, all right? That's just the most important part because we've got to start getting some of these neural pathways firing, getting some information loaded up because it has no idea what's going on here, right? But are we more intermediate, more advanced? Are we refining this skill, right? Meaning you're getting it right more often, maybe above 50%. Well, now we want to start dialing in this Goldilocks zone of success. We want to aim for 65 to 80% success. This is your target for refinement. You need to constantly tweak that challenge, okay? Make it slightly harder if you're exceeding 80%, slightly easier if you're dipping below 65%. That's how we want to stay on this productive edge where the brain learns the fastest and most effectively, because it's just pushing us enough. It's upping our dopamine, right? Saying, I don't like making mistakes. It's really annoying, okay? That keeps us motivated, all right? And let me give you a real story of how I use this. I had this kid, right? He's been playing for about a year and a half, and he could rally from the baseline. He had really good strokes and stuff, but his forehand needed a lot of work. So we were targeting a world-class forehand, and based on his success rate and the protocol, he just wasn't ready for baseline work, even though most coaches would say he definitely was. So for 3 weeks of our program, I literally kept him in short court, systematically tweaking difficulty. Toss to himself, then I toss, then I add movement, then I rally slowly, then I always do a little bit of tweaking, maybe more spin, maybe faster, right at his feet, a little bit shorter, right? Just tweaking it, but always making sure I stay between the 65 to 80% success rate. Another coach was like, bro, why don't you let him go back? Come on, kid. Hey, I want to see that forehand from the baseline. I remember literally looking at the kid, and I just said, no. Why? Because we were honoring the biology of learning, this Goldilocks zone, right? We have a very specific mission here. We're trying to stick to it, man. So when he finally did get back to the baseline, I remember him being so excited too. It was awesome. He looked phenomenal. I mean, the technique translated perfectly. It was amazing. And it was like we went from the short court, we went midway between the two, and like within 5-10 minutes, we were back to the baseline. It was amazing. We just broke through plateaus like that one day. And yeah, like that's what it's like trusting the system. Total translation of everything, much better way, much more effective way of learning. If you really want to implement a bottleneck-driven approach to mastering your game faster and becoming the optimal version of yourself, I do take on a limited number of clients. So if that feels like you, let's get to work, baby. So just click the link in the description. There's a link to book a call with me to see what works best for us. So the lesson to learn from this is to embrace the purposeful failure, embrace this system, right? Embrace your biology, right? Errors are biological upgrade prompts, not judgments, okay? So here's the cool science. When you make errors in this zone, your norepinephrine spikes alertness. Whoa, something unexpected is happening. Then your acetylcholine, right? It's another neurochemical, starts to act like a spotlight, right? He's amplifying the signal, right, from the specific neural circuits involved in this error. It's essentially saying, yo, guys, we gotta pay attention here, okay? And it's making those circuits temporarily more changeable, more plastic, right? Neuroplasticity, as you've heard of it. Then, when you focus and successfully correct the error on the next rep, your dopamine delivers the crucial reward signal. Yes, that's the right pathway. We did it, guys. Strengthen this connection, okay? So it's like a beautiful neurochemical dance going on here. This precise chemical sequence, alertness, focused attention, reward, and reinforcement, that's what drives our rapid skill building and maintaining focus through the error to leverage this, right? And keep dopamine flowing with those random intermittent rewards we talked about, right? We got a high five, a yes, come on, keep it unpredictable, okay? And I'll get more into that in a bonus later at the end. Next, we gotta take a micro gap after that execution rep, right? After we do those reps, we gotta stop, okay? You cannot just grind nonstop. We gotta take these random, frequent, maybe every few minutes, 15 minutes, right? Or after a checkpoint or an intense block of reps, we gotta stop. We gotta close our eyes for just 10 to 30 seconds. Okay? We just gotta be in that quiet stillness. And we gotta let our hippocampus, right, do its thing. And the hippocampus is amazing. You know how they say sleep's a superpower, right? Well, that's your hippocampus doing amazing stuff, right? It's got this high-speed neural replay and rapid initial consolidation going on here, right? Studies actually show your brain can replay critical moments at 20 to 30 times faster than real time, right? That's the hidden fast-forward button for learning. So please do not skip this. These microgaps literally replicate sleep, so use them as much as you can, right? Now stop. Let's do a 10-second microgap right now. Okay, so active recall question. What was the Goldilocks percentage zone? All right, let's see if you got it. It was 65 to 80% success rate. So after we take that gap and open our eyes, we want to have immediate active recall, right? You got to instantly retrieve something related to what you were just doing, right? We got to bring it back, okay, into our zone of awareness. Ask yourself, what was the key correction I just made? Or explain the principle behind that, right? We got to force your brain to pull it back without looking, all right? Now, why is this so critical? Well, because of the use it or lose it principle. Your brain is literally the world's most ruthless cleanup system. Think of it like a neural garbage chute working 24/7 around the clock. The moment it senses info isn't needed, it deems it not important and starts to wipe it out of your system immediately. Sometimes within seconds, right? You've felt this before. Remember forgetting someone's name 5 seconds after hearing it? That's not, stupid brain. That's efficiency. Didn't use it? Must not be important. Toss it. Immediately recalling stuff actually hacks that system, right? Think of short-term memory like writing on a foggy window, right? It starts fading instantly unless you trace it. I love how I did a heart. That's the thing that came to my mind. So it starts fading instantly the moment you trace over that fog, right? So recall reactivates the same neurons right after the gap, like saying, hey brain, this is important, please keep this. What was once short-term fog moves toward long-term clarity and memory. Effortful recall encodes it deeper, and that struggle is telling your brain, this is not background noise, this is the signal, this stays, bro. All right, now you're seeing the full power of this stuff. So let's do another micro gap right now, 10 seconds. Pause the video. Okay, we're back. Okay, now tell me, what does our chemical acetylcholine do when we make an error? All right, let's see if you got it. Acetylcholine acts like a spotlight, right? That says, hey, pay attention over here. This guy made the error, right? That way we can fix it. So that 90 to 120 minute window of doing this stuff, right? Doing reps, doing micro gaps, doing recalls, that's tough work, right? Well, our energy is going to start to dip. Our focus is going to start to dip. So we got to reactivate our why, right? We got to bring that ranking, that dream, that deep goal, right, back to the front of our minds. This reignites that dopamine drive. And we can also use other tools, right? Because we got dopamine bringing up the motivation. But what if we can use some other tools to bring up the focus, right? Well, we can use our visual focus target to bring in our visual cognitive focus and up our norepinephrine through that way, right? Have that visual focus target and stare at that thing real hard. Which, that's one way, but we can again do that cold exposure, right? Are we feeling sluggish, right? We can do the quick power breaths, right? Like we did earlier. Again, it's all boosting our focus and our norepinephrine and other chemicals, right? Are you feeling tense? Do a calming breath. 4 seconds in, 7 seconds hold, 8 seconds out, right? Remember, you are the architect and you are actively managing your neurochemistry throughout the session. You see this? We can do certain things to get exactly the internal state that we want at any moment. It's amazing, okay? So we keep doing this whole cycle of this stuff, right? For the full 90 to 120 minutes. After that, well, our peak focus window starts to close. It's like, hey, this door can only be open for so long, big guy, then I gotta close it. All right, there's a lot of stuff coming through here, okay? So after 120 minutes, you just gotta stop, my friend. Hopefully after 90. And a cool fact is, our peak focus is right at 45 minutes, okay? So just know that. After that, it starts to go a little bit downhill and then it's really bad. So now that we have finished the session, are we done? Absolutely not. We are now in lock it down territory. Phase 3, ladies and gentlemen, the afters party. So, sure, the session feels done, but neurologically, it's not. If you forget what you learned, well, you're just back to groundhog tennis, aren't you? Well, here's where most people blow it completely. I just walk away, man. Like, hey, that's a good practice. Okay, I'm gonna go home and eat dinner and do my homework. Like, bro, come on, we just grinded for like 45, 90 minutes. Are you gonna forget all of it? What was the point? You know? And no chemical tag saying this was important. No moment of silence for the replay. No structure to lock it in. That's just disappointing, man. Anyway, we're not gonna be leaving progress on the table like that, okay guys? We seal the session in like cement. So our goal is to tag the session as important, allow immediate replay, and drive deep consolidation. So step one is to tag the session. How do we do that? We gotta spike our epinephrine. You guys remember that lion chase? Well, you remember it because your body sent a message. This matters, remember it forever, right? So intense moments cause a huge spike of epinephrine, and this triggers a chain reaction telling your brain, burn this in. And the difference in the epinephrine before and after something is how the brain is able to identify that important stuff had occurred in that period, right? Like, yo, we should probably not go back to wherever that lion was and where our epinephrine was going crazy, okay? So that's really a cool little hack we can do there, right? We can hijack that same mechanism on purpose. So the very instant you finish your last repetition, I want you to do 30 to 60 seconds of something intense. Jumping jacks, burpees, cold splash, that intense breathing pattern, right? That creates a sharp neurochemical contrast, like I just said, that is tagging the entire learning session in your brain, saying, dude, this was important, consolidate it, we don't want to get killed by the lion. Okay, imagine you're like hitting forehands, or that's a backhand, but you're hitting backhand, right? And you don't tag it. So none of the stuff you did today was really that important unless you associate it with something else. But that neurochemical tag, oh my God, that was the most important backhand of our lives. So that we've got to do first. But after we've tagged it and done some epinephrine spiking, well, now we got to do step two, literally the opposite. We got to have immediate stillness. Right after that intensity, right after that spike, we gotta literally do nothing. We gotta close our eyes, we gotta sit down just for the next 1 to 5 minutes. Okay? No phone, no reviewing notes, no talking. Why? Well, you remember the high-speed neural replay from those microcaps, right? Well, we're doing that again, just for a little bit longer. We're just reinforcing the correct pathways, potentially pruning errors. Well, this is a mandatory time of stillness that is critical for some initial rewiring and to get out the things we just learned today moving into our long-term memory. Okay? So, after we do our little bit of stillness for 5 minutes or so, we move into step 3, deeper consolidation and reinforcement. So sometime later, ideally before your next intense session, which we have a 2 to 3 hour gap, by the way. So our session is 90 to 120 minutes. We get a 2 to 3 hour break minimum, okay? Before we can do another 90 to 120 minutes, that 2 to 3 hour break allows all those neurochemicals to recharge, all right? So sometime in there, I want you to do this deeper consolidation and reinforcement. Give yourself 10 to 30 minutes of this non-sleep deep rest. You know, it could be meditation, some yoga nidra, which is like a guided meditation, or just lying down with your eyes closed and letting your mind drift. Think of it as giving your brain quiet space to file and integrate what just happened. A brain-powered save and organize sequence, extending that neural replay. And around this same window of time, right in that gap, you also want to keep strengthening the learning with this spaced recall and testing, right? You know how we were doing that immediate testing, right? During the session, we were already beating 99% of people, but now you continue that process in the hours and the days ahead, right? So test yourself maybe right after that stillness, and later that day, the next day, a few days, the week, a month later, you know, so on and so forth, right? The gap keeps getting longer each time. And each time the brain has to fight just a little harder to pull it back, making the connections stronger. It's like, yo, wait, this is a really, really important one. We keep using it over and over. So I guess I shouldn't forget it. I probably shouldn't throw it out, right? Exactly. So remember, testing is not just assessment. It's actively rewiring your brain. And also, I almost forgot, it's very important after the testing that you literally have the correct answer there so you can see it after you've done it, your answer. Because if you're like testing and getting it wrong, it's not doing any good, right? You're just saying the wrong stuff and hammering in the wrong things. So you've got to know what the correct answer is, all right? And then be like, oh yeah, okay, that's the correct answer. And your brain made the mistake, it's focused in, and it remembers it and does that whole neuroscience stuff that we talked about earlier. So we've spiked our epinephrine, we've sat in stillness, we've done some deeper consolidation, right? But now it's time for the granddaddy of them all, sleep. We want to aim for 6 to 9 hours. And that's where the brain is doing the heavy duty construction work, structurally strengthening important connections, pruning weak ones, potentially even strengthening it with this myelin insulation to make the pathways faster, okay? It's like paving the path you cleared. You don't throw away your hard work by neglecting sleep. And here's a cool one, 6 to 9 hours of sleep, that's like 2,300 or 2,600 microgaps. That's crazy, right? So that's the power of sleep right there. Now you might be like, Japron, this sounds incredible, but man, this is a lot of steps. How the heck do I remember all of that and do it consistently, especially when I'm tired or stressed? You're right, it is a sophisticated system. It requires conscious effort. And honestly, that's exactly why I found myself struggling too, forgetting steps, or annoyingly, doing it in the wrong order, or just juggling apps. I gotta get this timer here, I gotta take notes here, do this. Oh my God. And that's exactly why I built the Architect app, because I built it for myself first, because I hated being at the whim of my own inconsistent ways. I embedded this entire optimal performance protocol into it. You got the pre, the mid, and the post session all there. It makes becoming the architect of your peak state straightforward and helps you build the consistency. And all I want you to really do is commit to just one fully engineered session using the app as your guide, okay? I want you to feel its full effect. All right, you've made it all the way through. Well done, really. Seriously, give yourself that internal high five, because here's your bonus for that commitment. That internal high five, that's your random dopamine hit. Good job. It keeps you motivated, makes your learning sessions more effective, and use this trick whenever you're randomly going through a session, right, to keep that dopamine up. But you gotta keep it random and intermittent with no obvious pattern, okay? That's the key. Sometimes celebrate a good shot, maybe a bad shot, right? Maybe for the process, sometimes just for existing. Often, not even celebrating can be the strongest motivator. You gotta keep them guessing. But how do you remember it? Especially randomly. Well, I built that into the app, so that's why I made that. But the second way, you can set several timers on your phone at random, right? I mean, sure, you're gonna know them a little bit, but it can kind of simulate the effect. So now you have the master key, the optimal performance protocol to engineer your state. But before we can chisel away at the rock, we gotta identify the most important rock, the number one bottleneck holding you back right now. How do you get laser focused on pinpointing that exact constraint so you can apply this powerful protocol with maximum leverage? Well, that is why we are taking a deep dive into the bottleneck identification in the next video. But first, before you go to that video, right, I want you to go and do your post-session lock-in for this one. Seriously, right now, stand up, spike that epinephrine for 30 to 60 seconds, then sit quietly with your eyes closed, okay? We gotta cement the gains from watching this. So, once you come back to this video after doing that stuff, let's learn how to find that biggest rock so we can start shattering it.